I'm actually... This was a bad idea. I don't know how we're going to get through this.
Hello and welcome to Talk Lit Get Hit, a podcast where we read questionable books recommended to us by social media and talk shit about them.
We're Bridget, Eryn and Laura, three friends who haven't mentally progressed since high school, where we bonded over a love of music and books, but mainly Twilight.
Brace yourself for a heady cocktail of somewhat highbrow and incredibly lowbrow ramblings about all the books the internet loves and our journey to figure out why.
Surprise, we're back! This episode we are officially on the piss, waxing lyrical about the year that was and reading the follow-up to the book that reigned as our most popular episode for so very long. Welcome to our episode on Wildfire, part 2 of the Maple Hill series by the one, the only Hannah Grace. It is officially party season, and so as a little treat to you and as a little treat to ourselves, we are releasing a juicy bonus episode with a riff on the theme we all know and love. Welcome to Talk Lit Get Lit. One more time for the year. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
This is something we've spoken about doing pretty much since we've made the podcast. I feel like one of us just had a little faux pas and said the name wrong, and then we thought, hang on a minute, this could be good.
Sounds accurate.
Yeah. I don't think there's many things that we have crafted very well in this pod. We're usually just
stumbling
off the cuff, and then we're like, hang on a minute.
This could be good.
That's not a bad idea, fellas. Not a bad idea at all.
We've had a couple of beverages so far, and you know we're
struggling.
We're in the festive season. We're feeling extra festive.
This is pretty weird though, because I think we've been friends since high school. We've been friends since grade 8 and beyond. But I think this could possibly be the first time that we're actually properly sitting down and drinking together.
I classify myself as a non-drinker, so it's not a surprise that this is our first time.
I'm a bit of a rookie myself, so I'm right there alongside you. 2 drinks and I'm done. I've lost my head. I'm completely senseless.
I'm nervous because you're about 4 drinks in right now.
Doesn't bode well.
We got to record quick, ladies. You excited to be here, Bridget?
Always.
Excellent.
Ecstatic. It doesn't sound like I am, but I am.
Would you say you're buzzed?
Yeah, sure. If you wanted to.
Convince me, Bridget.
I like to let my actions speak for themselves rather than my words. Thank you.
When are you going to dance on the table?
The table's covered in things right now, Laura.
Sorry.
Please pull yourself together, Laura. Get a grip.
Ladies, please.
No one's dancing on this table.
This is quite disastrous because often we find it quite difficult because we talk over the top of each other quite a lot when we're getting really G'd up and excited by the points being made, and already in my headphones I can just hear myself heavy breathing. I can hear both of you giggling away. So good luck to you, listener.
Yes.
Good luck to you.
Good luck to Bridget trying to edit this.
Yeah, I'm sorry, future me, for the decisions we have made.
So yeah, as we've established, we're a little bit buzzed and we have a few things to run through before we can start discussing our book. And God knows, I think I need a little bit more alcohol in me before I start to think about this one. So I think we could begin with a little bit of a year in review. Including Wildfire, we have read 19 books so far for season 1 of Talk Lit Get Hit, and they have not all been of the same caliber. So I think we should each take a turn ranking these titles. Let's each say which book we rate littest and which book we rate shittest. I think I can take the lead on this one. So if we're talking about the book that I thought was the best, I think it's If We Were Villains.
I agree.
Was a clear standout. I would be surprised if we didn't all put that one as our number 1. But then in terms of number 19, that was a tough choice because so many of these books were truly dreadful. I think my shittest book is The Love Hypothesis.
Wow.
I agree.
Whoa.
Yeah, twinsies.
I'm a little bit different. My littest book, it's a tie. If We Were Villains and Twilight.
Boo.
You're
I
relentless.
really thought you were going to say Ballad of Songbirds.
It's a close second. Especially
so
after
toxic.
seeing the movie. I love him.
It was great.
My shittest book was Before the Coffee Gets Cold.
It was truly shit. And that's where it got so hairy because the bottom maybe 6, 7, 8 books fighting for the title.
There is not much difference between that I mean, I didn't hate.
You liked the love hypothesis.
No,
Don't
I-
lie, Bridget.
I didn't hate reading the love hypothesis the way I hated reading Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I like it nearly impossible to force myself to finish Before the Coffee Gets Cold. But at least with the love hypothesis, I was fueled on by me going, oh, at like every disgusting thing that happened. So at least we had that. Before the Coffee Gets Cold I was struggling to stay awake. Another contender for me was I Caught a Frost and Starlight or whatever shit that book was called. I hate that book.
I swear I trauma block that book. I forget that it even exists.
I'm convinced it was a piece of fan fiction.
So in terms of episodes, my favorite episode was the red, white and royal blue episode.
Interesting.
Can't say the same for the book, but I love that episode a lot.
You did really take the lead in that episode. You came prepared. You had the most notes I have ever seen you had. You even recruited Brian to participate in that podcast for a little bit of authenticity. You came with receipts, and I think it shows through. High production value. I appreciate that episode a lot.
10 out of 10, no notes. My favorite is a tie. I used to always recommend the love hypothesis episode. I think it is so funny. I also really like the icebreaker episode, but I think at the time of recording this, the episode isn't out yet, but we've just finished the final edits on the Breaking Dawn episode. And I swear to God, when you guys hear it, it is easily our best episode to date. It is so funny. For episodes that are currently out, it's either Icebreaker or The Love Hypothesis, but it is about to be beaten. Breaking Dawn is the moment.
Eggs! I would have to agree. I have to agree with the people, and I have to agree with you, Eryn. I think Icebreaker is pretty great. I think just like nothing will compare to the level of shock and disgust that we collectively felt reading that book. And it clearly resonated. Another episode that I really liked was our Happy Place episode because it gave me just a really warm, fuzzy feeling when we were all talking about like friendships and the places in life that we're at and kind of maybe not enjoying the book the most out of all of the ones we've read, but enjoying the themes and the kind of adult friendships that were in the book. And listening to it is just a very cozy, warm hug of an experience for me.
I really like that because in that episode we talk about how we've never been like on a trip together. And as we are recording this, we are on a trip together. We are at the first annual Talk Lit Get Hit conference. We are having a great time. And we have referenced Happy Place many times while being here, which is very cute. We've been talking about Wicked Pisser a lot.
And I've been to so many fucking rodeos.
It's so true. It's so real.
No Ferris wheels though.
Yet.
And no lobster rolls. What the hell?
Yet.
Get it together, Gold Coast.
Sort your shit out, Burley. Okay, what about least favourite?
Okay, my least favorite, we actually forced ourselves to listen to it today. And it was our very first episode we ever put out, a little sneak peek at the hilarity that was to ensue. It's called Meet, Talk, Lit, Get Hit. It sucks. It's terrible. It was part of the ill-fated 8-hour recording day. And then we realized that we needed some sort of like trailer or like introductory. So we tried to like cut pieces together. It sounds terrible. We're so boring. It should be deleted, honestly. Over to you guys. What's your least favorite?
The upside is we are much better now than we were then.
True. It's a measurable growth.
Absolutely. My least favorite, I mentioned to you guys earlier today, it's the Daisy Jones episodes. I really love that book, and recording that episode was just so difficult for me. I had to go home and just cry afterwards. I was just on the defense the whole time.
Laura and I were like, this book sucks.
I think I've only listened to part 1 once, and I didn't even listen to part 2. I just could not relive it.
I have to agree. I was going to say the Daisy Jones episodes are my least favourite as well. We talked about this earlier as well, how we convinced ourselves that it needed to be split across 2 45-minute episodes for some reason. And then when you listen to one and then you listen to the other, like, what are we even saying? I was really nervous about this episode because I just thought, like, I don't really have anything new to add to this conversation because I quite liked this book, but then I think I found myself like trying to appease both of you rather than just like sticking to what I believed in. And I was just saying these like really wishy-washy things. And I think we just weren't very good at like editing them, at just cutting the shit. And so lesson learned, we've definitely gotten better at that.
It could be so fun to try and redo the episodes that we think are the worst.
I always think that about ACOTAR, like if we just redid them I couldn't go through that again. But maybe a quart of silver flames? Who knows?
Ooh,
2024.
spicy. Let's cut the shit. Quick catch up. What's hip and happening, Laura?
For once, I've had a pretty big month. However long it's been. It's been a bit of a beefy one.
2 months, I think.
Yeah, this is our first recording for 2 months.
Oh, too long between drinks, ladies.
Am I right, fellas?
Am I right, Russell?
Hey.
For once, I actually do have something to share. So my partner and I went on a trip to Japan, which was a bit of a treat. Everything was so functional and so clean and so beautiful and so delicious and just an overall delight. And
So functional.
great tech.
Such a funny way to describe.
Really good train systems, and the machines give you change like no other.
How many times did you get lost in Shinjuku Station?
I mean, I don't know if it's for the podcast, but I'm happy to share because everybody poops 2024 make it happen. But
What?
we spent
She shot
approximately
in the station.
almost
Oh.
2024. I'm not afraid anymore. That's my motto.
It's resolution. Shit, I want to shit. Don't care who knows.
Tick. Actually, navigating the trains wasn't a problem, but we did really, really, really need to use the bathroom multiple times. And so I think there was about 2 hours where I was like, oh, I need to go now. And so we'd go on a big loop around trying to find a bathroom, found one, and then walk for about 10 minutes trying to find our platform. And then, I actually kind of need to pee now. And then so it was just a vicious cycle, like just on different refill rates or whatever was happening. So that was our main ordeal there. But the good news is I got engaged.
I was really wondering how you were going to weave that in.
It was a great segue.
Oh my God. And I am happy to share that like right before I got engaged, I went to the
You're not
bathroom.
afraid.
2024, she's not afraid anymore.
I'm not afraid anymore. I was like, oh, no poop, just farts. And 5 minutes later, will you marry me? So you heard it here first, ladies. Don't be scared. Embrace it.
Embrace your shit.
I mean, you deserve to feel comfortable with the people that you love.
Oh, that's very nice.
And that's why I told you that poop story right now.
Moral of the story, only get engaged to people that you can talk about your poo life with.
I think so.
Congratulations, Laura.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
congratulations.
Yeah, so that's my big news for the month.
What about you, Eryn?
Fuck, I forgot we were doing monthly recaps. I don't think I've done a great deal.
You saw Paramore?
Yeah, I've been to quite a few concerts.
You had your first cheeseburger?
Oh my God, I did! That is probably the most prolific thing.
It is.
As a big cheese auntie, I did eat a cheeseburger.
Notorious cheese hater.
Yes. Well, I had to eat it because there was an incident where we had too many cheeseburgers and someone had to eat
many cheese in the burgers.
Eryn has never been the same since the incident.
No. And look, I still don't like cheese. And I thought I wouldn't eat another one. But when Bridget and I were driving here yesterday, we stopped at Macca's and I was like, I'm not really that hungry.
Could
but
really fang a cheeseburger.
yeah,
When in Rome.
cheeseburger is actually just enough for what we were doing.
Delicious.
So am I a changed woman? No. We've tried things. We've been to new places.
That's such a beautiful growth journey for you. And what a perfect note to end 2023 on.
Thank you so much.
Didn't you also go to Sydney or Melbourne or something?
Oh, look, I feel like I do that so often now. It's not even a big deal.
Neither here nor there. Let's focus on the cheeseburgers.
I've been to shows. You know what I'm about. That's it. Saw Paul McCartney. Didn't I tell you that?
Did he explode during Live and Let Die?
Yeah, I saw that too.
It was an absolutely insane production. It was so good.
I'm scared for him.
Bridget and I saw Paramore. Yeah.
And so perfectly aligned with the release of our Twilight Megamix extravaganza.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hayley. You're a real one for doing that
Yeah.
for us.
And what about you, Bridget?
Been at work? I don't know. What have I done?
You bought a house.
Oh, yeah, we bought a house. That's about it, I think. We have been packing boxes and we'll be moving on Monday, which is very exciting.
Yay. cut the shit, ladies. How are we feeling heading into book 2, Wildfire by Hannah Grace? What were the vibes, thoughts, expectations, feelings, fears?
Absolutely horrific vibes. I was not excited at all. We'd seen the cover. We weren't prepared to put ourselves through it again. I read the blurb. I thought I heard a rumor of who Russ was in Icebreaker. It was all repulsive, all vomit in my mouth. I was not excited.
That's a really beautiful way to describe it because that's very much how I felt. I also needed reminding of who the fuck Russ was. How is he worthy of his own book? He was nothing in the first book.
I mean, we did have this conversation in the Icebreaker episode as well. And I mean, stand by it.
Yeah, we were right, as we always are.
I had forgotten most of the trauma that I got from Icebreaker, I think, until we re-listened to the episode last night. And also, when I started reading the book, I was like, oh, that's right. This is why I had a terrible time. But saying that, one of my favorite Babysitters Club books was the super special number 2, Babysitter's Summer Vacation. And they went to a summer camp and they were counselors in training. I love that book so much. I read it so often when I was a kid. And I also swear by the teachings of the 1998 Parent Trap. Obviously,
We know you do.
In a summer camp. Watched it literally yesterday. So I think what I'm trying to say is I'm a big fan of camp literature.
For anyone who is drinking at home listening to this episode, take a shot because Bridget just mentioned the Babysitters Club.
For the 15th time.
The summer camp setting is something that appealed to me. But the ice skating scene really appealed to me as well. And I know you and I were both excited thinking about Ice Princess, and we couldn't name any other ice skating movies that we watched in our youth.
We did try.
Felt like there was a lot. I know it's not really like the same vibes, but The Parent Trap was a great movie. And so therefore I assumed, you know, in association, maybe Wildfire could be good. I will say I was on some level excited to read it because it was such a joy to talk shit about Icebreaker. But on a like, would I sit down and read this by myself? Not a chance.
I would never read this if I didn't have to for the pod. But yes, like you, I was ready to be like, oh, here we go, boys. Let's talk some shit. And on that note, let's talk some shit. As always, if you haven't read Wildfire by Hannah Grace yet, this is your chance to back out because spoilers are ahead. Content warnings for swearing, general drunken behaviours by the Talklit team, and also content warnings in Wildfire for gambling, addiction, abusive parents, all that kind of bad stuff. So do your own due diligence and proceed with caution.
Maple Hill students Russ Callahan and Aurora Roberts cross paths at a party celebrating the end of the academic year, where a drinking game results in them having a passionate one-night stand.
Never one to overstay her welcome or expect much from a man, Aurora slips away before Russ even has the chance to ask for her full name.
Imagine their surprise when they bump into each other on the first day of the summer camp, where they are both counsellors, hoping to escape their complicated home lives by spending the summer working.
Russ hopes if he gets far enough away from Maple Hills, he can avoid dealing with the repercussions of his father's gambling addiction, while Aurora is tired of craving attention from everyone around her and wants to go back to the last place she truly felt at home.
Russ knows breaking the camp's strict no-staff fraternising rule will have him heading back to Maple Hills before the summer is over. But unfortunately for him, Aurora has never been very good at caring about the rules.
Will the two learn to peacefully coexist? Or did their one-night stand together start a fire they can't put out?
So we've read it. How do we feel?
I have a quote from the book to sum up how I feel.
That's incredible. I wish I thought to do that.
It's on page 101. Anything that's not an icebreaker is a win in my eyes. I hate Icebreaker more than this book. Not as criminal as the first one.
You know, just that sentence alone already makes me want to go off on a tangent. I'm trying really hard not to get ahead of myself.
I mean, I'm not saying I liked it, but it was an icebreaker.
My thoughts echo that 100%. I expected to hate this possibly more than Icebreaker, given like the speed that it came out at and the fact that there's already a follow-up to this on the cards, ready for publication. I didn't hate it as much, and I will elaborate on that later.
Bro, I thought this was so boring. At least Icebreaker had something happening in it. This was boring.
It was incredibly boring, but I don't think it was as criminally offensive as Icebreaker was.
I think it was a really jarring experience because everything I hated about Icebreaker wasn't really in this one, but also everything I liked about Icebreaker wasn't in this either. I just found it so different and so boring. Even when I was trying to think of things to whinge about on this, I was coming up a little bit empty because just not a lot happened to set me off. But we'll see. There's always time.
It definitely is an interesting and very stark comparison between the two. But something that Hannah Grace said for Icebreaker and has also said in relation to Wildfire is that she's not setting out to write a profound book. And there is an interview with her on the website BookTrib where she says, "I like the escapism that comes from contemporary romance. I'm a big believer that not every book needs to have a profound impact on your outlook on life." And in a way, I feel like she kind of has us by the throat with that. Like, you know, I feel like I'm in my head going around and around in circles of like, oh, this book is so stupid. Like nothing happens. It's so boring. They just go from cutesy scene to cutesy scene to cutesy scene. Oh, but like she just like wasn't trying to say anything with it though. And it was just meant to be fluffy and lighthearted and feel good. I really don't know how to talk about this book in light of that because it kind of just feels like like a cheap shot by her almost, because on one hand she does have this book that is kind of fluffy and feel good, but at the same time, same as with Icebreaker, there's very serious themes and really big issues that the characters need to grapple with that are kind of just glossed over in a lighthearted way.
I think she did a better job than Icebreaker. Like this was much more palatable and I think respectful to all of the issues that it was trying to address. Just a bit more enjoyable to read. A tiny bit more enjoyable.
I agree. I think she's actually dialed back the drama and it's done a great service to this book because the emotional stakes are high, whereas before it was all going on all the time. But really it's just kind of like two things that they can sort out together, they mesh together, and it's happy days. There were so many times where I was waiting for that third act drama to happen and it just didn't, which I think does show her progression and her improvement. I think she dialed it back a little bit in terms of what the problems the main characters were facing, but I still think she didn't do them a great justice. There was a lot of, oh, I don't understand how this problem works, but I'm also not going to educate myself about it. I'm not going to educate the reader about it. And it's obviously not her job to educate people about it. It is not a Babysitter's Club book.
So when you're talking about the problem in this one, are you talking about, so our male main character, Russ, his dad's addiction issues?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like he said several times, like, I don't understand how it works, blah, blah, blah. And I get that he's like, it is his trauma speaking and he's trauma blocking it because it's always been like too hard and his tactic has always been avoidance. And I understand that. But I feel like so often it was just like with him, I don't get it. I don't want to get it. And I hate having to be forced into these situations, which is fine. But where is the growth?
The thing that I found frustrating was the way that both of their problems were wrapped up in such a rosy, sunshiny, like everybody learns and everybody grows, but no actual issues have been addressed kind of way. Like everything was tied up in bows. And I did find it quite interesting because maybe because we've been talking about Stephanie Meyer so much recently and about her total lack of research. But in the same interview on that BookTrib website, which is linked in our show notes, there is a question from the interviewer where they say, you live in Manchester, England, you're from the UK, but your books are set in the US. You managed to perfectly capture the realities of American university life in the sports world, blah, blah, blah. What's your research process? And in response, Hannah Grace says, I don't really have a research process, but I should probably get one.
Oh my God.
And I know that question was just in relation to the US UK focus, but it does really make me think, what else has suffered from a lack of research in this book?
I can tell you. I hated when they started listing presidents and then made a Hamilton reference and then just happened to mention the only presidents listed in Hamilton. It is so obvious that she doesn't know a single American president outside of the ones listed in Hamilton. And I'm not saying she has to, but if you're going to make him distracting himself with American presidents, at least name a few others that aren't written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And also, they misquote Hamilton in there.
Why are we so like plagued by books that are obsessed with Hamilton?
Why are they stuck in 2016?
Yeah, like it's a bit late for this.
We've moved on as a society. I mean some people
speak for
haven't.
yourself.
But, I mean, Most people have.
Yes, agreed. At some point, someone says the phrase one last time, and someone says, okay, Hamilton. Hamilton doesn't sing that song. George Washington sings that song. Thank you very much.
Get it right, guys.
Get it right.
Disgusting.
Disgusting.
When I read that, I was like, oh, Eryn will love this.
No, because it was wrong.
But don't you just feel so angry? I felt like every time I was writing something in my notes, you know, thinking, oh, just flesh this out more, or just make a comment on this, make a comment on literally anything. I would think, oh, but she was just trying to make like a lighthearted little frothy, silly little book. That, you know, I understand what she's trying to do. And I really, really do think there's a time and place for books like this, movies like this, like the Christmas Hallmark movies. This is what that really reminded me of. They're silly, they're pure escapism. But I just think pick a lane and stay in it. Like, you have to respectfully handle the topic. And I think, although overall, I think she's done a good job. She's done certainly a much better job, like we've been saying. I just still think there's like slightly better conclusions she could have drawn, better growth her characters could have had.
And it's mainly about Russ's problem, because I don't feel Aurora's problem was actually really dealt with. Her ranting at her dad does not fix the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. From my read of it, it's not even like she has fixed her problem. She just popped off at her dad. It's not like she actually resolved, I'm not talking to him anymore. She was like, well, I'm not going to the wedding this one time. And that's fine. Put your foot down that one time. But it was treated in the book like that was going to fix the whole problem. And it just doesn't. But specifically with Russ's problems, I thought it was really weird that his brother called him up and was like, get to the hospital, like dad's fucked up or whatever. And so he goes and he sees his dad's not unconscious like his brother told him. And with no palpable increase in tension, he just goes in there and pops off at his dad. Well, his dad is, who knows, on his deathbed because Russ didn't stop to find out. And then he's like, oh, I feel better now. 2 days later, his dad shows up at camp and he's like, well, son, you've changed my life. I'm not going to be addicted to gambling anymore. Like,
I'm cured.
Yeah.
My conjunctivitis is gone.
Yeah, like,
It's like the grandfather in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
exactly. Like, baby,
Clicking his heels.
It's not that easy. And like, my notes on this is like, one rant has saved Russ's whole life. And that's really what it comes down to. Like, I don't understand.
Imagine if he'd done it 5 years ago.
Exactly. Like, at what point was Russ going to be like, fuck, I should have spoken up for myself years ago and I wouldn't have dealt with this? I think I just wish that it was handled with a bit more realism, much like Anastasia's eating disorder. I just wish there was a bit more like care and realism and like acceptance of the fact that it is not sunshine and roses and one conversation won't fix it for everybody. Because it, again, comes down to the fact that you've got readers reading this who may be struggling with it themselves or have family members struggling with it. And it just seems like such a disservice to paint this picture to them that it is that easy to solve when it's not.
As we've probably already alluded to, there is huge overlap between the characters in Icebreaker and the characters in Wildfire. But not just that, at least probably 160 more characters are introduced in Wildfire.
One of my first notes was, who are all these people? Maddie, Bobby, Chris, I barely remember Robbie and Henry, Joe.
It
So
is
many.
The first page, it is half a page.
Page 1.
And there are 7 named characters on that page.
It's nonsense.
One of the worst parts of Icebreaker for me was the frat parties and the hanging out and the broing out with all of the boys and all that horrible things that we had to endure. In this book, it got it over and done with really quickly. And I found myself having a bad time every time they came back into the picture because they were so annoying and they're so childish and they're just not fleshed out enough as characters for me to care about them. There were some funny like one-liners. But as soon as they went away, I was like, okay, I'm having a nice time again.
And it was really painful, the whole like, we're family. Oh, $5 says Stassi cries. Shut up. I didn't want to see Anastasia or Nate again. It was annoying that they were back in this.
One of the things that I was like, are you for real right now? Is when JJ, who is just as annoying as he was in the last book, he says, the only emergency you're going to have for the next 2 years, Captain, is drowning in too much JJ, Stassi squeaks, cutting him off. Why is she so offended by JJ possibly saying the word pussy? We have read Icebreaker. We know what you do in your spare time.
What you text to JJ in
what
the group
you tell
chat.
everybody that you do. What Henry has to listen to you do. Why can JJ at a party not say the word pussy? She is the worst part of the group.
She is so annoying. And
Actually, she's not. She's one of the worst.
She's a very bad part, though.
I will say I was a JJ stan last book. I thought he was funny. I thought he was so annoying in this book. I think everything that I liked about JJ was given to Xander instead. Xander is just JJ in a top hat. It's not a different character. It's the same guy. You can't tell me they're different.
I absolutely agree with you. And I would say I started off thinking that there was absolutely no point of separation between any of the characters. Russ is Nate. Rory, Aurora, whatever her bloody name is Stacy. And then every background character has the exact same dialogue. Like there is absolutely nothing to differentiate them apart from the fact that it was like said Henry, said JJ, said whoever else. I can't remember any of their like 50 names. Like just don't bother having so many characters that have 50 different nicknames, have surnames and first names, all of which are used to the point of like derangement. Don't do that. If they're all going to sound exactly the same, I hate it. Thanks.
It's literally the same book. It starts the same. There is a hot-ass girl hooking up with a hot-ass boy, a friends with benefit situation, who goes to a party and meets another hot guy who is respectful and he's different. He's not like other boys.
I have thoughts on this, and I blew Bridget's mind with this yesterday, and so I'm not sure if you are hip to this jive, Laura, but let me break it down for you.
I'm awake, Eryn. I know.
I was asleep.
So at the start of the book, Aurora talks about hooking up with a guy. His name is Ryan, which is also the name of the guy that Anastasia was hooking up with before she meets Nate. It is absolutely unhinged, but I also really love the way that this is handled in the book. It's so funny. About Ryan, Aurora's internal monologue is he has a reputation for string-free fun, and I firmly believe he should be awarded by the college for his services to women's happiness during his 4 years here. So he is well known for sleeping around, which no judgment on that, but I think it's iconic that I hope, like at this point, I genuinely hope that in every book he has slept with the female lead, like unproblematic king, because in the next page, the very next page, page 13, he says to Aurora, I'm going to be jealous of the guy who gets to hear what happens in your head when you have that look on your face. And she says, I don't think we need to worry about that. And he's like, nah, I'm just a stopgap. I'm the guy you fuck right before you meet the love of your life. And she's, wait, it gets better. She says, statistically, that's going to happen if you fuck everyone, which burn, Ryan.
Bit of an Easter egg.
But God, I hope he's just fucking everyone. I'm kind of obsessed with Ryan now.
Cannot wait for his book.
So the final line of this section is, trust me, Aurora, I should start a money-back guarantee scheme. You will get your happy ending. So he even knows that every chick he sleeps with, the next person that chick sleeps with is going to be her happy ending. And Ryan has the self-awareness to know he's not the one for them.
I think he's been reading some of Taylor Swift's journal entries because she says that.
Oh.
She says, I'm the girl you date before you find the one you're going to marry.
Well, now I'm
So
really
he must be a Swiftie.
Well, Hannah Grace is a Swiftie, right?
I'm really curious though, because if he does get a book, I actually think it'll be interesting for him to have that discussion with whoever his one true partner is.
He'll be able to say, hey, did you read the books Icebreaker, Wildfire, whatever the other ones are called? They're all me. I'm in all of them.
Let's start talking about our main babes, Russ and Aurora. I, for one, would like to start off with their first conversation together, where Aurora is nonsensically ranting about glasses. And her internal monologue is, this is the longest conversation ever had about glasses. It's 2 fucking sentences long. I'm sure there have been longer conversations, but also you're not as awkward and quirky as you think you are. And I find that as a character trait so annoying. Every time she's like, God, I wish I could just shut up right now. Shut the fuck up then. It's not that hard.
I also thought it was funny when she said that completing an English degree probably doesn't make her qualified to start handing out book recommendations. Yeah, it does. It's an English degree.
You know, I actually genuinely forgot that was her major. So in the
Same.
epilogue, when she opens the bookstore, I was like, this doesn't make any fucking
She
sense.
even liked books? Yeah, that's what I was like too.
But then I remembered this bit where she talks about how she hates the classics and only reads contemporary romance, which is fine. Like, no judgment, read what you like or whatever. But that was boring.
But once again, massive guy, tiny girl.
Oh my God, I have notes on this.
Not as tiny as before. And, you know, she does make an interesting choice to wear stilettos to a frat party. I mean, I don't go to frat parties, never went to a frat party. Don't have frat parties.
5'7".
But why is she wearing stilettos to a house party?
Well, that's a great point.
She's trying to get laid, Bridget.
But another great point is like, why even bother mentioning that your female protagonist is 5'7" if she's still going to be the tiniest girl ever and the man is going to be colossally large?
I really hated all the conversation about like how big he was, how big his dick was, how pretty his dick was. And then when she made them go in the tent and they were like, we're pretty good at making things fit. And then the next line was like, we couldn't make it fit.
Like end chapter. The whole chapter is like, I found a tent. I put out the tent and we said we could fit. I thought we didn't fit.
Like, just a fucking waste of everybody's time. I don't care.
Wasn't that just every scene though?
Yes.
Like, oh my God.
There
And
was
then we found some pit. And then we went on a payment. Oh my God.
And serious, I was just about to start this conversation. I love dogs. Get the fucking dogs in this story away from me. They're so annoying. Why do they have like fish? When she was like, oh, fish is knocking at the door, but fish can't actually knock. There must be someone else. Duh. You for real?
I did like the name Fish for a dog, but when it extended to like all the fishes in the world, I was like, oh, come on.
And then it was like 9 years later. And we got some of Fish's puppies, bro.
Trout.
How is Fish still having puppies 9 years later? Like,
She's dead, sweetie.
yeah, like,
Fish had to go to the farm.
she was having some young ass babies then. What the fuck? Fish is dead. Trigger warning for pet death. Sorry.
I think as we chat, I'll probably have more to say about Aurora.
Aurora, I didn't mind her. She was fine. And same thing with Russ. They were fine.
I didn't mind them both.
They weren't Nate and they weren't Stacey, Stasi, and that's all that matters to me because
They were and they weren't. Like, this is what I meant when I was saying before that all the worst parts of Icebreaker aren't in this book. Like, everything I hated about Nate is not in Russ, but Nate and Russ are still so interchangeable. The bar is on the floor, ladies, but at least Russ wasn't like, oh, baby, don't do that. He's mean to you. Like, he just let Aurora do whatever she wanted. He had trust in her, and also vice versa. Like, she had trust in him. They weren't like mothering each other. They were just actually supporting each other in a way that Anastasia and Nate never were. So I liked them in that sense. And JJ was so right when he said that, like, Russ is just a straight white man. However, I hated that bit when Russ was like, I don't have any red flags. And JJ's like, you're a straight white man. That's your red flag. Shut the fuck up, JJ. You're so annoying in this book.
Virtue signaling bitch.
Yeah, like, he's just so annoying in this. And every time he's like, yeah, I give pretty good advice. Shut the fuck up. I liked you better when you were a big dumb shit.
still a big dumb shit.
Yes, but give me himbo vibes. Don't give me like, yeah,
True.
I'm so smart.
Well, just wait until we get his book. It'll be such a delight.
I hope I like it. I want to like JJ, but he was so annoying in this. And like, why is he suddenly like the quote unquote dad of the group? Why is everyone like, JJ keeps us all in line? Since when?
I thought that was Robbie's role.
Let's use this as an opportunity to talk about Robbie because I think he's the most unhinged teenage character I've ever seen. He is actually 45 years old. When he like was having an aneurysm that they didn't want to wait and hear the rules for drunk Jenga, it is not that fucking hard, Robbie. They don't need to hear the rules.
It's not. And I'm in two minds about this. One of the minds I'm like, yes, it is so annoying to be trying to explain things to people who are going to be like, wait, what do we do in like a minute?
Yeah.
It's literally what I do all day, every day. But at the same time, it's Jenga. And I think there was a quote I really, really liked when he was trying to explain it and he was like, just listen, guys, we're good. And then JJ was like listening and then he's like, so it's just like regular Jenga. Which, yeah, it is.
Yes.
Everyone can figure it out.
That is the bit, like those are the parts of JJ that I think is so funny and so good. Few and far between in this.
The Jenga game gave me things I loved and things I hated.
I do really love a drinking game as a plot device when there are like clubs or parties or whatever happening. It's a good way to force your characters together.
Mm-hmm. It changed my perception of Lola. So I started out the drinking game being like, oh, Lola, shut up. I hate you.
She was so annoying.
She was funny when she called
Shrill.
Stassi Godzilla. That was funny. I really, really liked that.
Isn't that just because she like hit the table or something?
Yeah,
and was like,
knocked it
sit
over.
next to me, muffin.
It's what you were saying before about how, like, the cup conversation where they think they're so quirky. And I understand, like, different strokes to different folks or whatever. But to me, it's like giving the energy of, like, I like pineapple on pizza. Like, that's just me. I'm crazy. And it's
Yeah.
like the most mundane stuff that just feels like a little bit cringe to read.
Again, another scene that didn't need to be there. But when they were like, where did the nickname Muffin even come from? And everyone was like, I don't know. Like,
And I
how
was
do you
like,
not know?
are we meant to know this? Was this in Icebreaker?
I honestly can't remember.
Yeah, it is in Icebreaker because it is exactly how Russ explains it.
I actually have a recording of myself at this time because I was reading it and when I got to that, I was like, I made this noise. So the first time that Stassi called him Muffin, I was like, ew, why? And then the second time,
I just got to the second time where Stassi called Ross Muffin and I made this noise involuntarily. Like that. It makes me sick.
I really relate to that.
oh,
Visceral reaction.
there was lots in this book
Yeah.
that I had visceral reactions to. Another thing that I had a really, like, it just made me feel sick was when it was their Jenga dare to kiss and she started moaning.
I know. And there's
stop right
multiple
there.
times they're publicly moaning.
Yes.
Cut it out. That's so embarrassing.
And I just thought to myself, I'm having the most like visceral reactions to this book and I haven't even had sex yet.
yeah. Oh.
What is going to happen when I get to that bit in like 2 pages?
I did love that there were way less sex scenes in this than in Icebreaker.
Well, same. And one of my notes, and to be honest, didn't do any research on this, but one of the things we hypothesized for Icebreaker was that because she wasn't like a traditionally published author when Icebreaker was coming out, we were thinking like maybe there's so many sex scenes because she was publishing it like chapter by chapter on her blog. I don't know if that's fact or if that was just something we were thinking would make it more excusable. But one of my first notes was like, oh, she's like partnered with an actual publishing house and an editor for this book, and it does in fact show. Like, there is a through line for these characters, there is a plot line that goes from A to B, and the characters have some sort of emotional journey, and there is like an appropriate amount of graphic sex scenes in this book. Probably more than I care for, but I fully acknowledge I'm just simply not the target audience for this book.
I agree. I was thinking this when I was reading throughout because I started the book and I like had like a flashback and I was like, wait, didn't Icebreaker end in the future when they were married and they had kids and double epilogue? And I was just thinking like, why are we back to the time of the main book? Like, did she not expect Icebreaker to have that success? So she just like tacked it on. I mean, rightly so. She shouldn't have expected it. And it shouldn't have had success if we're being honest. But then I got to the end of the book and I see, oh no.
It's the
It was
brain.
intentional. There's another one.
It's kind of, epilogues are kind of her thing.
They are kind of her thing and I wish they weren't.
Me too, because I agree, it was jarring. I didn't expect to see Anastasia in this. And so when she showed back up again, I was like, yeah, where's the baby?
It was kind of like Bridgerton when Daphne rocks up for like 1/8 of an episode, like
It
without
really
her
was.
partner who didn't get a contract signed, like
Because he thought he was too good for season 2.
yeah. That's what it reminded me of. And it was also like that thing we've talked about so many times, like with Bella and Edward when they get boring, when they're like a couple, and like Rhysand and Feyre. I don't care to hear about Nate and whatever her name is in this book. That story's done. Like, they reached their resolution. I don't want them as a side character.
Because they were boring in their main book. They're going to be boring now.
I think that Hannah Grace really is trying to build that Taylor Jenkins Reid cinematic universe because Like there were just so many little, I think she would have thought they were fun Easter eggs, but I was just like, oh, stop telling me things that I already know or like hinting at things that I should remember that I don't because your book was so like such a struggle for me to get through. But one of the things was that the bar, they were talking about the bar that he used to work at and it got shut down because there was like anonymous complaints about suspicious activity. I was like, yeah, maybe because people were having sex when they were dressed as Gru. Like that bar should be shut down.
That is a crime. Any bar that lets that happen should be shut down. You're so right.
Snitches get stitches, and I would be a snitch for that. And I would happily take any stitches because I would not want to be witnessing that. I didn't even want to read it. And I had to. If I saw it in real life, it would be even worse.
I actually have to admit there are a couple of points in this book where I just fully became sucked in and I was like, this is pretty good dialogue, or this is a pretty cute scene, or oh my God, I'm feeling emotions. One of the moments I found myself getting really sucked in was actually the first time that they hook up while they're at their camp. And I mean, you know, pretty painful to read the lead up, pretty painful to read the aftermath. But that scene where she's like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go out and go in the rain. And then she goes to his cabin and she's like trying to find him and he's not there. And then she turns around and he's walking through the rain. And I actually thought to myself, ooh, like a little bit Pride and Prejudice. But then had the disappointing experience later on of her being like, I love Pride and Prejudice. I read the classics.
But doesn't she hate the classics?
She hates Mr. Darcy because he's an asshole.
It's funny though that she's made all these silly comments, but then had the absolute gall of quoting Marianne from Sense and Sensibility as the quote to start the book. I was like, keep her name out of your mouth, Hannah Grace. Oh my God.
But there were a couple of moments in this book, like I think, you know, once again, I will say it again, this book is not for me. It's not a book that I would have picked up on my own. I know I'm not the target reader for this book. And so overall, I didn't enjoy the montage of fluffy cutesy scene, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. Like it was just relentless and so boring. But there are a couple of times like that Pride and Prejudice walk through the rain scene where I did find myself getting surprisingly swept up in it. And I felt like I was reading like maybe an Emily Henry book or a Taylor Jenkins Reid book or something like of a book that is like quote unquote of a higher caliber.
I liked that part a lot. I liked when they went to their spot, as they called it. I thought that was quite cute. I liked the moments when it was just the two of them. To be fair, I liked the other campers as well because we only knew 3 of them and we didn't really know Clay. We only knew Xander and Amelia, so I didn't feel like we were getting character fatigue. I liked that part and I liked the camp.
This is something else I was thinking about, and there have been so many points about reading this book, especially in comparison to Icebreaker, where I'm like, oh, I'm just old, like I'm a square, because like a cozy camp setting, like out in nature, like is so much more my pace than like frat house club scene. And so like I would much rather fall in love in this setting. I can picture this. I wouldn't mind experiencing this as opposed to like getting fingered in the back of a cab while my friends are getting McDonald's, or like just like sticky floors of a frat house party, no clean cups, like smells like BO. That's not a hot vibe for me. But this, I'm like, oh, it's kind of cute.
You've just opened up so many discussion topics for me, like without even meaning to. Firstly, how about when they fuck watching Ratatouille? That insane. Genuinely fucked up. And they're also in the middle of nowhere in the back of a car, like absolutely unhinged behavior.
We don't yuck someone else's yum on this show.
Yeah,
we
just because
do
they
not.
like Ratatouille.
It is universally questionable that if you're going to get it on, you're going to put Ratatouille on. I get it because they made the reference to Ratatouille earlier. I do understand it's self-referential. I just cannot picture, out of all the movies that exist in the world, him being like, yeah, this is it, guys.
Well,
this is what we're going to bang to.
I think I'm going to have to disagree. I really liked that. I mean, not the sex part, but I thought that the movie choice was cute.
Yes, as a date,
Yeah.
Absolutely cute. When they started banging, I was
worried that someone was going to come and kill them, though.
Yes, it was giving Wolf Creek vibes.
Are you watching what's happening? Anyone could be out there.
Absolutely. Like, how do they not know someone's filming? I also want to talk about some of the other dumb things that Russ does because he's a big dum-dum. I liked when he was reflecting on what he calls the worst time of his life. Now, he comes from a very abusive and emotionally unstable family. But the worst time of his life was when he was accused of ruining the ice rink. Are you fucking for real?
I couldn't give a shit about that when it happened in Icebreaker. And when it kept being brought up, I was like, why are we talking about this again?
I know. And like, objectively, he was supported so well through that. Nate had his back. They all looked out for him. How is that the worst time of his life compared to everything else he has been through with his family? It makes no fucking sense.
He just thinks that like everyone, it's like everyone's looking at me because one time the ice rink was ruined.
God, I loved it though when he told Aurora and she was like, oh, yeah, I think I heard about that in passing. And he was
I
like,
don't care.
Slammed. Yeah, like actually not a big deal. And he was like, no, babe, this is the worst time in my life. You better listen and listen good.
Also, he didn't explicitly say this, but I think it's safe to say that the second worst time in his life was when Aurora said that hockey means you're chasing
Holy
a ball.
shit.
He's like, it's really important to me that you know that hockey doesn't use a ball. And he just couldn't let it go.
He kept going like, tell me you know it's a hockey puck. Tell me you know what a hockey puck looks like. Babe, she doesn't care. She doesn't give a fuck. She could not care less.
Had something in common with her because I could not care less either. It was so boring.
It
like,
was
shut up, you're turning into Nate.
I also hated the like, it wasn't so much love bombing in this, but just really lazy like romance. I hate whenever anyone's like attempt at flirting or compliments is, I think you're perfect. Oh, you're so perfect. Shut the fuck up.
I would add on to that to say that it's so disappointing for me to read characters, especially characters that are written by females, where the attractiveness of characters is so intrinsically linked to their physicality. The way that they're being portrayed as sexy or sexually appealing is like so deeply steeped in the male gaze. Like nobody is attractive to a character outside, or like separate to their appearance. Some of their first interactions with one another are like, oh, his arms were so veiny and so huge. Like he was such a large man. Like he was ... so attractive. She was wearing a tiny dress that hugged every curve. And I go around in circles because I'm like, oh, okay, who am I to police, what you find attractive? Sometimes it just is attractive to see someone in a tiny skirt and like no shirt or like whatever it is. But the way that it kind of reinforces this idea that there is only one way that you can be attractive and your worth is linked so deeply to your physical appearance is just so depressing to read, especially from a female.
Yeah, and it's something we talked about in the Fourth Wing episode as well, when we talked about how we knew Xaden was attractive because of the things he did and the way he behaved. That is what made him attractive. We didn't need to be told that he was 7 foot tall or whatever the fuck he was and that his dick was huge. It's irrelevant because his behavior was attractive.
Okay, I have 2 more things to say about their relationship and then I'm ready to move on. The first one is, it was about 100 pages in and I think that Russ was having a conversation with Xander and Russ was freaking out about something stupid that he thought that Aurora had said, or I don't know, something like that. Xander said something to him like, it's not true unless you heard her say it. Just because you think she said it, unless she actually told you, it doesn't mean that that's true. There was a few moments in this book when it really could have gone sour and it could have gone south because of miscommunications and people assuming. But they sort of fixed themselves on that quite quickly, which I was really happy about because that was something in Icebreaker that was really annoying. How could you do this to me? Babe, that's not what I meant. I'm not even going to listen to you. It was on and on and on. But they sorted out those little issues before they came like deal breakers. And I was really pleased for that.
I agree. I really liked that. And I thought it was actually really cute when they acknowledged it and Aurora was like, oh no, you made me do the miscommunication thing. Like, I thought that was cute.
It was cringy, but it was productive as well.
Yeah.
and healthy.
It was something I could see like happening in a real life relationship.
Same, because it is awkward to bring that stuff up. Like, you kind of do have to be a little bit cringe about it to address it. I reckon, especially if you're new to a relationship, you're not that familiar with one another, you don't know what level of seriousness you should treat it with. So yeah, I thought that was cute too.
Yeah.
Also because both of these people, this was their first relationship.
Yeah.
And so they were both figuring it out together, I guess. As a podcast, as a rule, we don't yuck someone else's yum.
That's a life rule for me generally.
But I do have to say that the praise kink in this book really made me uncomfortable. And I just think it was because it wasn't acknowledged that was happening. It was like, get it, guys?
I thought it was weird because I felt like it didn't happen that often during the sex scenes. It was kind of outside of the sex scenes.
And I think it didn't happen organically. Like, I feel like if you're in a relationship, if she liked that, he would find out eventually. But it was straight in. It was from the start. And it was relentless. And I was like, why is there one thing you're relying on to make this sexy?
I found the sex scenes to be quite revealing because the dirty talk between Nate and the dirty talk between Russ was identical. And I find that quite revealing as to the way that Hannah Grace's romantic partners speak. I don't think Russ has the confidence to be speaking to somebody like that.
I know that Eryn's King JJ did give him the actually great advice that no one knows that you're not confident other than yourself. That is great advice.
Absolutely.
But I don't know if he can really take that under his wing and like adapt it straight away.
That's such a vulnerable situation.
Yes.
You're not going to be like, I'm naked, I'm like performing this sexual act for a girl that I really, really like and hope likes me. And also I'm just going to enact some porno that I've recently seen as well, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I find it hard to believe that he so easily slipped into kinky sex when he was giving himself pep talks before most of their interactions.
Before and after.
Yes, I liked the pep talks. And you're right, King JJ did come through with the goods on that one. And I kind of like seeing the realities that sometimes guys aren't as confident as people expect them to be. I like that, but I don't think it lines up with what his actions in the book.
I think if you're going to have a character like Russ, who in my opinion was like a very good switch up from Nate, who's somebody who embodies much more like toxic masculinity. Russ was like someone who was more insecure, kind of more so seeking acceptance and permission and validation from those around him. And I think that's something that that's a way that you don't really see men portrayed in a lot of mainstream novels. And I really would have liked to see that reflected in their sex scenes because sex is not always how it appears in like porn. I really would have liked to have seen those vulnerabilities that he has in his day-to-day life and the way that he is interacting with Aurora typically reflected in a kind of like shy way of having sex that's still like enjoyable for both of them.
And I think it's worth noting as well that like praise kink is almost on the like vanilla end of the kink spectrum, but at any rate, any kind of kink should be negotiated. And if ever there should have been like a conversation about how it was going to work, it probably should have occurred in this book. And obviously Aurora, she alludes to being tied up before, so she's obviously familiar with that world. I would have thought we would have seen a conversation about what they like, what they don't like, what they're willing to do with each other. With the setup that Aurora had and with the insecurity / almost different levels of experience that Russ is alluded to having, you would have thought they would have talked about that at some point rather than leaning straight into that praise king.
I think that kind of brings us to the conversation around consent. It's something that we've kind of pointed out in books we've read previously, like Fourth Wing, and I think possibly Icebreaker as well. And it's something that happens multiple times in this book as well. An example of a conversation around consent in Wildfire would be, I think, the first time they hook up after the Jenga, and she says something like, "Oh, let's go to your bedroom." And he says, "It depends. Are you sober enough?" I had a reaction to it immediately of like, ugh. Like, consent. And I thought, that's interesting. Let's store that away. And, you know, like they have these conversations around consent multiple times throughout the book, maybe 4 or 5, maybe even more times. And each time I kind of thought, tick, you've done it. You've mentioned consent. And then I started to think about it a little bit more. And I really started to wonder if the reason that these conversations stand out to me and stand out to us is just because we're simply not used to them. Because it's right. Like you should be having these conversations with your partner, whether you're in a relationship or not. It's a healthy thing to do. And regardless of if it's a box ticking exercise, it's setting a precedent that is very healthy, very appropriate, and something that you should actively be engaging in. It kind of was reminding me of those like little videos you'd watch on like the rollout VHS in school that was like how to say no to drugs. And it would be like, no thanks, I don't go in for that, or whatever it is, which seems so cringy and lame. But like, what other choice do you have? That's just how you have that conversation. That's just how it goes. You have to rip it off and you have to say those words. And I kind of think the same goes for the consent conversation. I think it stands out to me because I'm just not used to seeing it.
I think it's interesting. I liked the way they handled the consent convos in this. I thought this was a lot more natural and a lot more familiar to me than previous ones have been. Before, it felt so much like a box ticking exercise. Whereas in this one, I felt like when they had to kiss as part of drunk Jenga and he just said to her, are you right to do this? And she was like, yep, are you? Perfect way to do a quick check-in.
Yeah.
Without disrupting the flow or anything like that. It wasn't overtly a consent check, even though that's what it was. And I liked it. I didn't think it distracted from anything. It didn't seem like Hannah Grace was going like, see guys, consent check.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I do want to make it clear. I actually don't think she was doing that. I think like the reaction I had was purely based on my own like lack of familiarity with that conversation. Not to cast a negative light on any past interactions I've had, just because I'm not used to reading it in books. I really think it's something that's not addressed enough. And so actually in that respect, like hats off to Hannah Grace, because I think it was great.
I think it is interesting though that she chooses to draw the line at doing consent checks for that. And then, like, as we talked about before, does nothing about, like, kink negotiation or anything like that. There are some interesting lines drawn, as there often is with her, about where she decides to put her efforts and her attention. And it was something that we had to say when we did the icebreaker episode about the forced, or what felt like forced diversity and, like, really tokenistic box ticking exercises. And we had very similar diversity in characters in this one. But for me, at least, I don't know that I felt it was quite so tokenistic. I felt like Amelia, who was Aurora's gay best friend, was pretty well fleshed out, and it wasn't just an afterthought like JJ's questionable sexuality is. Not that we need to know, but it definitely seemed like a throwaway character trait for JJ and more of a well thought out process for Amelia. So I think, again, it's indicative of Hannah Grace's improvements, I think, as an author. But yeah, still kind of, we'll chuck one in here and we'll chuck something else here. And I think we had a similar difficulty with it in Icebreaker, because it's nice to see that. It's nice to see people making an effort to have their books reflect the world that we live in. But it's hard when it still feels so tokenistic, and also both your mains are still white.
I think that was the sticking point for me, because I don't know if it necessarily felt forced, because like you said, it does reflect the world we live in. And I know I'm not an author, but I think I would certainly feel uncomfortable as like a straight white woman to be writing from another person's perspective and writing about these experiences that I have really no stakes in. And I think if you are doing that, you need to be doing your best to be trying so hard to accurately represent like another culture or ethnicity or like minority. And it should be respectfully done. It should be like a consultative process. It should be something that's done so sensitively. And so I really understand her hesitation to do that. If it is a hesitation, if it's a conscious thing that she's doing, I totally get it. And so I don't know if I have as many criticisms about it this time around. because I think also the way that it sits with the other topics of like Russ and Aurora's emotional growth, it just feels a little bit more balanced, a little bit more fleshed out. Like it really was an improvement. And so it casts that in less doubt.
Yeah, I think you can see she's trying a lot harder to be inclusive in a genuine way now compared to how it was perceived in the icebreaker episode.
I think she just has a better editor.
Ooh.
Maybe she has a editor.
Yeah. Something has happened. Something has changed. And I think it's good. And I wouldn't say I'm excited to read the next book, but would be more willing to pick it up.
Should we talk about the next book real quick? Because
Yes,
I have a
please.
few thoughts about Henry in this book, and knowing the next book is about Henry, I'm so confused. Like, I already said that JJ had a pretty big character change in this. I think Henry did too. Like, I know we talked in the icebreaker episode that Henry got a lot of attention from girls, and we weren't quite sure if he was being shady because he was gay or if he was autistic or what the vibes were. But his character in this was so different, at least to me, to his character in Icebreaker. Now he's like hooking up with chicks all the time, all over the house, in every location. He is so much more confident. He's got like this Riz game that came out of nowhere. But it just feels wrong. It doesn't align with the Henry that we've grown to know and that some people have grown to love. Question mark. It's just so different.
I have a question. Did we know that Henry was an artist?
I also thought that it was such a big part of his personality, and I thought, when did they plot drop that?
I feel like it might have been a sentence. It kind of vaguely rings a bell.
He comes back in the epilogue and he's crankily again painting a mural of the Northern Lights. Ugh.
I love it so much that in the epilogue, Russ is like, so Aurora called the only person that she knows that could do this task, Henry. Like, you're telling me she doesn't know a single other artistic person? She can't even Google one to find one? She just asks you, mate.
As if she doesn't know cover artists.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
Actual graphic designers.
Well, I mean, one part about Henry was the only time I've really ever enjoyed Henry's presence. It was on page 35, and the line from somebody, probably JJ, was, Henry, you can't just knock over the tower when you get bored of the game.
Yeah,
I relate to that.
Funny.
That was like Icebreaker Henry. And that is what I think we all kind of enjoyed about Henry, is that he was just like this shady little fucker, like always kind of fucking shit up just to be a pest. And then in this, he was just kind of like arrogant in a way he hadn't been in the last books, and just kind of really unbearable. In the first book, he was made out to be this like unproblematic, respectful king. And in this one, I don't think he is portrayed like that at all.
And in the first one as well, it seemed like he was borderline asexual. Like, Henry gets so much female attention because he just tells it like it is, but he couldn't care less for that. Like,
Yes.
But he did at the end, he did sort of become like the Podrick Payne of
Ooh.
Maple Hills. He was pulling ladies left, right, and center. And they were like, why does he get so much female attention?
I mean, it's the question on everyone's lips.
Yeah. Even explained in air quotes, we still don't really get it. But
And then knowing that the next book in this series is Henry's book is very interesting, because we have a preview of the cover art, and the illustration of Henry is portraying him as a person of color, which is not something that I picked up on at all.
it is news to me, but there were a lot of like Henry stands on TikTok angry that people were like, I think rightfully confused. I mean, not to say that it has to be explicitly stated what color skin he has, but I had no idea that he was a person of color. And everyone's saying, no, the clues were there. It was there. Like, were they?
Sorry, it should not be clues. This is the same conversation we had in Fourth Wing when What's-Her-Face was like, no, people can't make Xaden white. Why can't they? You never once actually said.
If you're going to have diversity and inclusion, I don't think that it should be ambiguous. Like, that's just
Exactly.
actually not the way that it works presently.
I think what's confusing about Henry being portrayed as dark-skinned on the cover of his book, and it never being mentioned to our knowledge within the source material is that she goes into crazy detail on some other shit. The peach shampoo, the honey and whatever Stacy had.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot go into detail of that level on that shit and then say you don't need to go into that level of detail on the race of your character.
To be fair, we may have missed/forgotten. So
Yeah, I feel like we would have picked up on it though.
I mean, I don't even know that it was the same situation as Fourth Wing, like you said, where like Xaden was described as being like, I think it said like darker skinned or like tanned or
There
something.
were some
brown
hints
skin.
for Xaden, yeah.
And it made you think like maybe, but also like historically authors have only ever meant like white person who is tan when they've used that descriptor.
Correct.
I just think like have a little bit of conviction, have a little bit of backbone.
So I'm curious to see if it gets addressed in the book or what the go is.
I think you just said then that you think that she needs to have conviction, and I agree. I think she needs to have faith in her story and let the story breathe on its own and write it in a way that it will do its job without having to rely on fan casts like Fourth Wing did or, blog posts like Twilight or illustrated guides like Twilight. All of these things, you shouldn't have to do that to create a story that is cohesive and comprehended on its own. And I feel the same way about a few other things that she does. So I feel the same way about the epilogues. We shouldn't have to have epilogues to feel complete when a story is finished. We shouldn't have to know what happens 9 years in the future when they're boring and they're engaged or married and they're opening a bookshop. I don't care about that. I shouldn't be reading this. On a less serious note, I also have a problem with Daydream. The female main character is wearing a Taylor Swift cardigan, folklore cardigan. And I just think, stop trying to ride on the success and like market this towards Swifties. Like, just write a good book.
Should we talk about the playlist?
Yeah, let's talk about the playlist because
It's not a new thing.
also offensive to me because it like besmirches Taylor Swift.
Thought it was because you own that same cardigan that What's-Her-Face is wearing in the cover.
Yeah.
And now you're going to seem like a Hannah Grace fan when you wear it.
How embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
I know. And okay, this is my statement. I've prepared a statement on the playlist.
Oh my God, stop it.
Why does this woman continue to hurt me?
Strong
This is
start.
before I'd even started the book. Continuing on from Cruel Summer on the Icebreaker playlist, we have two of my favorite Taylor Swift songs on this playlist, Peace and Sparks Fly. Both, especially Peace. Peace is such a beautiful song. Adding more insult to injury is the recent release of the cover for the third book in the Maple Hill series, Daydream, where the female main character is seen wearing a folklore cardigan on the front cover. From being a Taylor Swift fan from 2007, I've gone through it for Taylor Swift, and I'm sick of having to do it. Just leave her alone.
Leave
Yeah,
Taylor
you're like being
alone.
dragged down in
Taylor
association.
alone. Trying my best not to be a hater, but sometimes I can't help it. Anyway, I decided to lean in and I actually listened to the playlist as I read. And I have to say there are some true bangers on the playlist, but it backfired because I got distracted by the playlist and was listening to that instead of reading the book. So
It's pretty easy to be distracted when nothing fucking happens.
also a good point. That's the end of my statement. Thank you.
Bridget will be
great
taking no further comments.
Direct all publicity queries to hello@talklet. Get it.
I know it's not that serious, but you know what I
is.
mean? It just feels like you should be proud of your work without trying to market it so obviously.
I just appreciate when a work of art stands on its own. God, she's got me by the throat. Every time I go to make a criticism of this book, I'm like, yeah, but Hannah didn't want that. So earlier you did say about how you were relieved that there wasn't like a third act breakup or a third act drama. And most of the time I'm pretty annoyed by that because you know it's coming and then it arrives and you know it's going to be resolved. Sometimes it's done well. Struggling to think of examples, but I know there surely have to be some.
Beach Read had a good one.
Yeah, actually, Beach Read was pretty good. But this had none. It had absolutely none. And I think the way that the book was written established that there was going to be none. And so probably the greatest tension that we had was when Russ was in the shower and his brother was calling him relentlessly, and Aurora, for some reason, thought, oh my God, there's so many missed calls. This could be an emergency. I better pick up his phone and answer. And then his brother, who I believe is like 90% to blame in this scenario, rattled off all of this private information about like their dad being an addict and everybody's role in that scenario. And then poor Aurora had to like pass on that message and like face Russ's
Wrath.
I think overall, I think this was a good like miscommunication scene. I think it seemed really authentic that he initially reacts in the only way he knows how, which is to close off entirely. And then she is like rationalizing with him and has to like talk him out of it. I like it in that sense, but I fully agree. The brother should not have told Aurora that shit. He should have just said, get Russ to call me. But then on the flip side, like he knows Russ isn't going to call him because he's been avoiding his calls this whole time. And we know that Russ's brother does this shady shit to get what he wants. He's done it several times. So still his fault, but not really surprising he's behaved in that way. I liked when Aurora pointed out to Russ, like, I think you're reacting poorly here and you're being madder at me than I really deserve. I agreed with that part. But then she goes on to bait him and is like, yell at me, let's fight about this. And I can yell back at you that you've been keeping this from me for months, which not really the same thing. He is allowed to have his privacy. Just because you have shared with him doesn't mean he owes you sharing in return.
Just because he's your airport doesn't mean that you're his airport. A stupid thing they kept saying to each
Share
other.
your baggage with me.
I'm an airport.
When did they say that?
And it's in the thing too. It's in
Stop
the dedication.
In the picnic scene or one of
Yeah.
their like hike
like,
scenes.
I don't want to give you my baggage. I'm an airport. Give it to me.
Oh my God. I don't remember that at all.
And then
That's
she's
so
like,
funny.
oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. I'm such a freak.
Sorry for interrupting.
Maybe that's why I trauma blocked it, because I hated any time she had that kind of dialogue. Anyway, I just think it was weird. She was right to tell him that he was reacting badly. And I think she was also right to say, like, let's fight about this. But to flip it back on him and be mad that he hadn't told her yet. It's not the time, and it's also not really appropriate. Like, you don't get to decide what he tells you.
There was another miscommunication as well. It was between me and the book because I thought she already knew this. And I was so confused about why they were fighting. I was like, he's told her this, hasn't he? I had to flip back and be like, oh, I really misread that. But like at the same time, when she heard that, wouldn't she be thinking, okay, there's more to this story? Like no one's going to say, my dad wasn't nice to me. That was the end of it. Like
Yeah.
there's something else going on. Just
Yeah. I think it takes a pretty selfish person to hear that, to see him react the way he reacts and be like, but what about me in
Yeah.
this scenario? Like,
And also pretty crazy to say you kept this from me for months. And that's the entire amount of time you've known that person. Like you yourself having trust issues and acknowledging and understanding that that person has trust issues. To have that double standard is pretty staggering. But I mean, again, that said, it was a throwaway line. I think like overall she was a pretty good communicator.
yeah, and I think she was using it to say, come on, don't retreat into yourself.
yeah.
Let's talk it out. If we're going to do this, let's do it like this. I also just like, who cares? Get over it. Like for her, actually both of them, who gives a shit?
I
What
think
does any of this matter? There's bigger problems at play here.
Say lovey?
it is interesting. I think you're right, because her drama with her dad is kind of pretty surface level. Like it is just sometimes he's mean to me. And so maybe she did take his sometimes my dad is mean to me really surface level.
That's
like
true.
he's just like my dad. And then it is deeper than that. But surely when you hear or like realize that it's deeper than what you thought, your first response is, oh shit, I've misread this. Not, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
Hit us with some random things you thought were funny. I love
Okay.
it when we do a bit of a speed round.
okay, yeah, I've got some things.
I love
Page
this
3. I did not want to know that he has to strategically plan when he can jack off. Don't tell me that. Moving on. Page 6. Someone needs to explain to me what the clap the cheeks singular joke meant because I didn't understand it. So if you guys can shed some light on that, what does that mean?
Eryn? You're laughing in a way that
I don't know
shows
what
you
the
might
singular part
understand
means.
it.
I know what clap the cheeks means, but does she only have one butt cheek?
One long tubic
don't
butt cheek.
Get it.
No, I think it means they're not having sex, they're jerking off. And so the clap the cheek sound is them jerking off.
Speaking
That was my interpretation of the phrase
Right.
clap the cheeks singular.
Okay, next one for me that I thought was really funny was Aurora says to Mason on page 11, Mason, can you give your dad my number? He's hot. And then in brackets, he's not. I thought that was really funny. And then also when Aurora met Russ for the first time and she was like, oh, it's very clean in this frat house. There's coasters. And then she spilt the drink or whatever and he's like rushing to mop it up. And she goes, oh, so you're the one who dusts.
I did like the banter there about like the thief in the house.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I liked it, but
I liked it the first time. I liked when he was like, oh, do you burgle houses often or something? I thought that was cute. I didn't like it when it had its reprise at the end of the thing.
I just think that whole conversation wasn't enough to be having a conversation about. No. But anyway, moving on. Page 37, reporting pointless lives for bullying and harassment is iconic. And that's something that I do. I love reporting TikTok lives for suspected underage users because I always see like 13-year-old girls doing stuff and I'm like, this is so unsafe. And then I go in and I report them and then they get blocked and deleted. So you're
That's
welcome.
so funny. I had the same notes of like, she is just like me.
Yeah, you're welcome, parents of the world, for me helping your children stay away from internet predators.
Listeners, please don't block and report our videos.
And then the last part I really, really thought was funny was on page 83 when Aurora was stuck talking to Clay about like how much he bench presses or some boring shit like that. And she said, I'm struggling to follow along. And not because I'm not smart enough, because it's just really, really boring.
She could be funny. I thought it was funny when she refused to acknowledge whether she knew hockey had a ball or a puck.
Comment that I wanted to say in line with ass cheeks clapping was that on page 214 when they are having sex in like a bathroom or something like that, I believe. It says, the sound of their bodies slapping together drowned out the storm.
Fuck, that's loud. That's so loud.
You've got a bit on. It's a bit noisy.
Just
dial it back.
thinking practically about how loud that has to be.
Booming.
I'm imagining them in like a little wooden shack as well, like no protection from the elements.
Oh, God.
Hagrid's the hut in Harry Potter.
But
Isolation cabin in the Parent Trap.
doesn't he say to her a couple of times, like, I want to hear you, like, I want you to be loud and stuff? And it's
Like
like,
blocked it from my mind.
bro, you've got underage children next door. Maybe don't do that.
Also, another thing with the children, when all the losers came for Russ's birthday party, as if all those random frat boys would be allowed to just wander around a children's summer camp.
With a visitor pass.
Oh, they
and
would
it's like,
need a blue card.
they're like, it's all right. They've got a visitor pass. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Who approved the visitor pass?
It was also like depressing to me. I mean, I know, yeah, female fantasy, like blah, blah, blah. Like, just can we have like one female author that doesn't continue to perpetuate like huge dick is the only good dick, like fantasy? Like, we've had so many comments like, I'm just trying to calculate how that thing could fit, or like, I'm just thinking about how it might split me in half. Like,
Yeah.
it's like not just the fact that the dick is consistently huge, but the fact that it will actively like damage you. Like, you could take it, or like, let me know if it hurts or whatever. Like, just could there just be like, there can be enjoyable sex without a colossally large penis attached to it.
Yeah, and these girls are always deep-throating these huge-ass dicks. Like, I'm concerned for their safety. But not only that, the sex scenes always start at such high stakes. Like, Icebreaker was eating her out against the door. This one, eating her out on the desk. Like, same vibes. What happened to hi? Hello.
I mean, what happened to like building trust and
What
like,
happened to giving a lap dance in front of everybody after a game of Jenga?
God,
and moaning?
the lap dance. Although I will say I thought it was very funny, and I like a sense of realism in this when he had to keep like distracting himself so he wouldn't come too early.
I didn't mind those scenes. I mean, overall, I thought their sex scenes were like quite good. Just The way he was speaking to her was just so like, I don't know who possessed this man, but it just doesn't align with the character she painted. And it would
It
have
was
been
Nate, the ghost of Nate in the bedroom.
The ghost of Nate's
I'm
past.
possessed.
Well, it is weird though. It's like she tried to write another character, but then doesn't know how to make that character sexy, so just defaults to what she finds sexy.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to articulate before.
It's really strange, actually, because Russ was, like we said before, Russ was sexy in his own way. Not to me, but he could have been.
He was certainly more appealing than Nate.
Yes,
Yeah, because he
definitely.
wasn't consistently like, I want to put my seed inside you.
Give me a moment now.
And being like, I own you. Tell me who your daddy is. I don't
And
know.
then tell
if
me
that's
how
like
much
an
you hate
actual
hockey.
quote, but like- oh, what a square.
What a puck.
Oh, God. All right, should we wrap this up, fellas? So let's do our usual things. Do we have favourite characters?
You know what? I liked Russ. In terms of male protagonists, I think he was a little bit different, a little bit sensitive, a little bit insecure, especially given its predecessor, Icebreaker, and Nate, and Nathaniel. I thought Russ was pretty good. So yeah, Russ.
I think you're right. I also think it was very funny. Even though he's an engineering major, he couldn't figure out how to unclog the toilets.
Oh
And
my
then
God.
she was like, what if we just flush it? And he was like, no, don't. And she was like, no, let's just flush it. Let's just see what happens.
I loved it when it was his birthday and that little shit of a kid drew him a birthday card and he was like, oh, nice picture. What is it? It's you crying over Henry's turd. That was so funny.
So funny. He was just like this little weasel of a man. And like, so hard to imagine him built the way he's described because he's just not that in my head. He's just a little weasel.
What about you, Bridget?
I think it's a tie between Russ and Aurora. I like them both.
Yeah,
And I feel
didn't
like
hate
we
her.
really do have a track record of being like borderline misogynist when we talk about the female main character. So I feel like I need to chuck her in for some.
I did find
Good
her
karma.
quite relatable. And probably should have talked about this when we were talking about the character. But like,
better
yeah,
late than never.
good for you, Aurora. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Thanks.
Sorry, what are we good for youing her on?
A general
not annoying
journey
me.
of life. Thanks for your service.
Good for you, babe. You're not annoying. Do we have a least favourite?
Anyone who frequents the frat house that isn't Aurora or Russ.
I've got a very specific
I hate
one.
them all.
And I don't know what his name is. But it's one of the mystery characters that showed up out of nowhere and we don't know who he is. But he is a frat house dweller. Mm-hmm. He's the one that was obsessed with the girl at camp from when he went to camp.
Jenna.
And he was like, oh, has she talked about me? Oh, I can't wait to see her. Oh, does she talk about
And
me?
it was meant to be funny, but it just wasn't.
The only funny part about that was when Russ actually asked that girl what she thought, and she was like, I love it when people who were here as children sexualize me now they're adults. Like, pop off, queen. Laura.
Mine were all of the puppies.
That's so fair.
Salmon, fish,
Trout.
Oh, and
can't think of any
then
other
9
kinds of
years
fish.
later there was flounder and something else.
barramundi.
Yellowfin snapper. Toadfish.
Catfish.
I don't understand how she could make us hate puppies. But she did. She did. And you know what?
Pooping.
Also, now that you've got me on the puppies, sometimes they were just in places that didn't make any fucking sense for these dogs to be. Also, how big are these dogs? Are they not Labrador puppies? They get big so fast and they're always like, one's sleeping on my chest. How are you sitting there with the fucking Labrador puppy laying on your chest?
They've got to be big enough to knock on the door.
It was so stupid.
I hope we get the puppy story next. And it's like, We get like an Airbud takeover, and like there's all these kids on the hockey team that like get not picked on the side because some dogs.
Oh my god, Napoleon is the Ryan of the book.
Ryan's love story is the puppies.
Sorry to bring that into the world.
I don't mean it in a gross way.
I thought you
I
did.
mean it like his one true love is a puppy.
You're sick.
Okay. All right. We need to move on.
No.
It's the pinnacle of our episode, of every episode.
Please pay us so that we can afford a producer.
To keep us on track so it's not 10:20 on a Saturday night. We're still recording.
Oh, God. Actually, before we do the pinnacle of our episode, I think it's important that we address what a masterstroke doing a drunk episode of Talk Lit Get Hit has been. I don't even know what we've spoken about. I feel like this is going to be an absolute train wreck, even though we've been recording for 4 hours. I don't know what we're going to get out of this. I can't wait to hear the edit.
All I know is I've been doing a lot of heavy breathing.
That's me every episode. Lucky I've got 6 weeks of holidays coming up.
And
Not much on.
Thank God we prefaced this by saying, "Oh, hey, we're drinking," because I've been doing a lot of glasses clinking.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard before, but I pretty sure I chipped my tooth on the metal straw. So if you hear a big clunk, then mind your own business.
Oh, God. Okay. On that note, we're in the right vibes.
Do we even need to
Yes,
have
we
this
need.
conversation?
We have to. Was Wildfire by Hannah Grace. Little shit, Laura.
Shit.
Bridget.
Shit.
Shit. The shits have it. We may be lit, but the book is shit.
We are Talk Lit Get Hit, and this is our last drink for 2023. We are truly, madly, deeply, so incredibly thankful to our listeners, and we are so excited for season 2. Make sure you subscribe to the show, and if you want to be on the same page as us, follow us at talklit.gethit on Instagram and TikTok. Cheers!
Talk lit forever.
Closing.
Oh, forget Brian. That's the new outro.
Did you know this song's about